Hey everybody, this is Jason from Fuzzlord Effects, and you're listening to the Fuzz Life podcast. Today we're getting to sit down with Al from Occult Effects, and we're going to be talking about the pedals that he makes, what got him into music and building guitar pedals, and then what he's got going on for next year. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating, and share it with a friend if you like this episode. We're going to get started right now. Hey Al, thanks for taking the time to chat with us on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So for folks that aren't familiar with you and your work, I was just wondering if you could tell everybody a little bit about what Occult Effects is and the kind of pedals you build and kind of the types of music that you're...
Sure. So I started Occult Effects about 3 years ago. And I focus mainly on, fuzz and overdrive and distortion pedals. Recently, I've been kind of expanding on that, doing phasers and delays and stuff. And I tend to try to cater towards the darker side of guitar playing and music in general.
I've noticed that a lot of your pedals have really cool kind of, well, it's definitely aimed towards the occult kind of stuff, and like the Grimoire, for example, or the Murmur, or the 1692, which I believe was named after the year that the Salem witch trials took place.
Yes, that is true. I lived in Boston for a long time, and there's a lot of creepy history surrounding that region. So that was kind of a natural thing to gravitate towards. And I've always, been interested in the occult and all of that too. So it kind of made sense for me.
Now, for folks that can't see your pedals right now, of course, they can hit up your Instagram page, which is at occult.effects, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
These things remind me of, your pedals look like you could, if they were a book, you could open them and start casting spells or something with them. So could you describe a little bit about what your stuff looks like and the kind of the whole aesthetic? Because when I first saw your stuff, I fell in love with the look of the pedals.
Oh, thanks, man. I kind of just was going there. Was it the Zero Fret guy that you interviewed recently? He kind of mentioned like part of his aesthetic too, where he tried to he couldn't make him look really pretty, sort of thing. And I kind of was in that same zone, so I kind of went the other way and made him look creepy and spooky, something like maybe they got dug up out of a grave or something. I don't know. So it also just worked with the whole like ethos of Occult Effects.
So I definitely, it's really tough sometimes to get these perfect looking pedals. Like I think guys like us, sometimes we're like looking at companies like Boss and stuff that like probably own CNC machines and all these kind of things. But how are you manufacturing your boxes and coming up with like all these handmade looking like really custom looking designs that is looking like you're doing a little mix of spray paint or etching? Or could you just tell us a little bit more about how you're producing these boxes?
Yeah. So yeah, like you were saying, I have no fancy tools or anything like that to do any of my pedals. I do everything by hand. And recently, well, probably in the last year or so, I started hand engraving each enclosure, like all the graphics on there.
Yeah.
And so I'll use like a rotary tool to do that. And that definitely, there was a little bit of a learning curve with that. But I think I'm quite pleased with the way they've been turning out, doing the hand engraving. And then, the the rest of the enclosures, I do different stuff, painting, or I've recently been messing around with acid etching as well. So
very cool. I definitely dig the aesthetic, and nothing can beat like the handmade, one-of-a-kind look where you're etching or whatever type of handwork people are doing. So whenever I see your pedals on Instagram and stuff and see the mix between the different paint jobs and the acid etching, and of course actually etching on all of the logos and the names, I just think it's really cool, because whenever I own pedals like that, I really just feel more of a connection to the builder.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, especially, a lot of musicians want something that nobody else has, so to have like a pedal that's you're the only one who has something like that, I think is pretty cool.
Definitely. So I was checking out a bunch of your pedals earlier, like the Grimoire and the Murmur, the 1692 and the Pinnacle. I was wondering if you could just tell us about maybe some of the favorite pedals that you make, or maybe the backstories behind a couple of these.
Sure. So the 1692 was the first pedal I started. I started Occult Effects with, and that one has just it's kind of been my favorite. It's kind of like my, I don't know. It's like my main one that I started everything with. So that one's kind of a special one to me. And the name too, like I said, I lived out on the East Coast in Boston for a long time. So that kind of, is special as well. Another one of my favorites recently has been the Murmur, which that one has been kind of a long, love-hate relationship with that circuit. It's just taken me a really long time to get it like exactly where I want it to be, which I'm sure you and a lot of other pedal people can understand.
Definitely understand the love-hate thing.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we like make these pedals and we play them and they just sound like everything we want them to be. Then like I might plug them into a different amp, and then a different day just it isn't doing it for me.
Right.
What's that one based off of, or kind of like? Can you just tell us a little bit about so we can get an idea of what it does?
Yeah, that one. The Murmur is based off of a Black Russian Big Muff.
Nice.
It's been one of my favorites for a really, really long time. And, there's not quite anything like the real thing, but, there's always something that you can change for your own, for your own liking.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that's what I tried to do with that one. And I think I've finally got it to where I want it.
So what are some special things, like tweaks and stuff that you did to that pedal that, of course, like updates or things that you improved on the Black Russian Muff?
I've I've tweaked the tone control, which I think for a lot of players is like a very problematic part of that circuit. I've had people tell me that, I love a Big Muff, but as soon as you turn it on, it just like disappears. You can't hear it at all in a band setting, anyways. So I've adjusted that to help with some of that, the mids drop, and I've also added like a mids boost switch on there.
Nice.
And changed out a few other components, in the circuit to give it a little more volume, a little more gain, make things a little heavier.
All sounds good. Then one of the other ones you've been messing with lately is the Is it the roll right stone? Am I getting that correct? Your new phaser.
Yes. Yeah. That one's been kind of a long process as well. Phaser circuits are they're a lot more complicated than, a lot of fuzz circuits. So that one's
For sure.
That one's been a lot more a lot of work as well. But that one kind of started out as I had a friend who just said, "Hey, can you build me a phaser?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll go for it." And so this has a few elements of some other classic phase circuits. And then over, I don't know, the past year and a half or so, it's kind of evolved into its own sort of thing. So
I'm checking out a photo of it right now, and it's got 2 different foot switches on it, and then a toggle and 2 knobs. And for all the listeners right now, the artwork on this one that I'm looking at on Al's Instagram, Occult.Effects, looks like a mix between like some sort of witchcraft book and some Viking runes with the hand engraved artwork on it. What do the different knobs and the toggles do on this one?
So, in its most recent form, the Rollright Stones has like a master on-off switch, turn the phase on, turn the phase off, and the second foot switch is for a boost.
Oh, nice!
Pretty simple boost. The knobs are for the rate of the phase, and the other knob is for the volume of the boost, and the toggle is toggles between 2 modes of phasing. So there's like a shallow and deep, basically.
Nice. I think a phaser is just kind of a nice staple on any board, and I think for dudes like us that are most of the time building fuzz pedals, it sure is nice to kind of step out of that into the time-based effects world.
Totally, yeah. And I tried to still keep it, with the booster in there. It still kind of is, has that, element to like push things volume-wise.
That seems like a really cool feature, and it's no surprise that from a dude like you building such heavy pedals and stuff that we'd see like an extra gain stage or 2 inside of things like a phaser. What are maybe 1 or 2 of your other favorite pedals that you've been messing with lately?
Let's see. Probably... my most recent pedal that I released is called the Mother Shipton, and that is an overdrive, and that one kind of came about from. So I had a different overdrive that I was making called the Grimoire, and that one has like it has like 3 knobs, 2 switches. It's like, for me, I like to keep things simple, and that one was like a lot of stuff going on for me. So I kind of like started over in the whole overdrive area and just kind of wanted to do something really simple. And so this one's just a 3 knob overdrive that is not based on a tube screamer.
Always like to hear that.
Which I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like a tube screamer, from time to time as well. But there are so many, so many of them that it's like, you don't need to throw another one into the pile. You know what I mean? So this one was kind of a fresh start as far as overdrive goes, for me anyway.
And I believe this is the one that you based more off of the sound of like cranked British amplifiers.
Yes. So think like old, I don't know, all those old 70s hard rock bands just cranking out, those Marshalls and stuff. It's kind of what it sounds like.
Nice, man. So I'm curious to know, you're obviously into like heavy music and doom metal and occult things. I'm really curious to know kind of your backstory of how you got into playing music and into these kind of genres, and then how, I'm assuming, Occult Effects formed out of your love for music.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up with, music in the house all the time. Like my parents always had music going. My dad especially, and he was really into like Earth, Wind and Fire and like
cool.
the Gap Band and stuff.
Nice, yeah.
So that's kind of like how I like first. Those were like some of the first, like, first songs I ever like really got into as a kid, like really little. And then as I got a little older, I started skateboarding, and skateboarding has a really close relationship to like punk rock and heavy metal and stuff. So I kind of ended up through skateboarding learning about all these other types of music and cut my teeth on a lot of cool stuff that way. And that's probably how I got into the more. That's how I learned about a lot of the heavier stuff,
So grew up listening to more laid back music, then all of a sudden you hit the skate park, and then coming home listening to hardcore music and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. I was in middle school. I was in like the school band, so I played saxophone, and I had kind of a musical background since I was a little kid too.
That's really cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to pick the thing up now, I couldn't do a damn thing with it. But that it definitely helped me have an ear,
So you were playing saxophone before you started playing guitar or bass or anything like that?
Yeah. Oh, by a pretty long time, actually. I didn't get into playing guitar until I was a teenager, like 16 or 17, maybe.
Okay,
something
cool.
like that. Yeah.
Well, that's really good. I used to play bassoon in middle school, so if we were in the same town, we would have been in band together, man.
That's awesome. I was always like the smallest kid, so I had to play like the alto sax. I was playing this tiny saxophone. But eventually, started playing guitar and starting bands with my friends and all that kind of stuff, and eventually like tinkering around with different, my bandmates and I ruined a lot of gear, like opening it up and like ripping it apart and stuff. But
yeah, can relate to that one.
It's kind of how you learn, So
what were some of these early bands that you were playing in like?
My first ever band that I was in was like a psych rock band, like
nice.
A psychedelic band.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were like really into like all of the weird like 60s stuff, like Iron Butterfly and all that kind of stuff. So and that's kind of when I first started getting into pedals too. I didn't really know anything about them. I went to my local guitar shop, which I think was, I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called Haight-Ashbury Music Center, actually. But yeah, the dude in there sold me a Big Muff, and that was the first pedal I ever had. And from there on out, it was kind of just pedal head.
It's pretty easy to get hooked on those. So I'm curious to know, what was the first pedal that you built?
What was the first one I ever built?
Yeah, and like how did that whole experience go?
The first one I ever built from scratch. Well, I guess not from scratch, but the first one I ever really built was I think it was a Fuzz face kit from, I couldn't even tell you what site it was from. That was, a long time ago, but I built it and I put it together and it didn't work. Just nothing happened. And I was gutted. I felt so shitty. But and I actually don't think I ever finished that one. I scrapped it for a long time. And then years later I tried a different kit and that one ended up working. But yeah, that first one was a Fuzz face.
It's a bit scary on these first ones. That was something me and Carrie from the Zero Fret were chatting about, that the first kit that he built didn't work. The first kit that I built didn't work. And it's a little bit scary when you're doing that, because on your first couple pedal builds, you don't really even know what to go looking for as far as what is making the pedal not work.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and especially at least back then, I didn't realize that there was a huge pool of resources available on the internet, I didn't even know that existed back then. Now I know there are tons of forums and stuff where people are helping each other out, build stuff, and help troubleshooting and things like that. But yeah, back then I had no idea. So yeah, it was pretty scary and discouraging.
Well, speaking of that, what would you kind of say to someone that just built their first pedal kit and that it isn't working right now? I think sometimes it's just nice for people to hear that guys like me and you and Carrie and everyone between definitely banged our head against the wall quite a few times to get to where pedals started to make sense.
Totally. I mean, I think the kits are definitely the way to go, but just know that there are, if it doesn't work right away, which it probably won't if it's your first one, and that's okay. But there are so many resources online of, people willing to help out. And I mean, even I've had people reach out to me before, asking how to do something, or they're building something, and so just don't be afraid to seek out help.
Definitely. I think it's really encouraging for a lot of people to hear that they're not the only one that put a part in backwards or made a mistake on something. I think it's more it's more of a rare oddity for someone to be like, oh yeah, pedal building's easy. Everything just went great. This is the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
It's kind of there's a reason there's not more people doing it, but I think for anyone wanting to get into it, there's, like you said, there's just nothing but resources and help available online.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I understand that it can be intimidating at first, because you're looking at all these little parts and stuff, and you don't know what any of them are due, or so you can look at it and be like, holy shit, I don't know what any of this stuff is. It looks weird, whatever. But yeah, once you do it a few hundred times,
there you go.
you'll get there. But yeah, there's a lot of people willing to help out there, so that's really good.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting you mentioned about how intimidating or complicated things can look. It's almost it's like witchcraft or magic going on inside these boxes, which I think lends itself so nicely to your whole aesthetic and theme of all of your handmade pedals.
Yeah, it definitely definitely feels like that sometimes still, even for me. Like, I'm like, oh man, I'm still, I learn stuff every day, learning new stuff. I don't have a background in electronics or anything, so but yeah, I think that is part of that is a cool way to tie in the occult theme there, though, for sure.
Definitely. I think that's one of those things that, like, constantly learning, and I mean, every day people are making new innovations on guitar effects. It's one of those things that I think keeps folks like us really interested and like feeling like it's still brand new, even when we've been doing this for quite a few years.
Oh, totally.
So
yeah, there's some. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just there's a lot of builders out there, especially like guys doing the digital stuff, that are just doing some really crazy shit. It's easy to just want to keep going, and you see all this new stuff coming out.
Totally. And even though we've been fuzz pedals have been around for a really long time, it's like every day cool new stuff is coming out, because I don't think that people need to reinvent the wheel to make a better wheel. Like, everyone's putting unique and original ideas on these pedals that, like, you may base something off a Big Muff, but making something brand new, like you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you nailed it there.
So given that you've been playing music quite a long time and messing around with pedals and sounds, I'm kind of curious to know if you might tell us some of your favorite amps or like pieces of gear that you've stumbled across over the years.
Ooh, yeah. My current favorite amp is probably not what some people might expect. I got it mainly to do these, like, smaller demos and stuff. But one of those micro orange amps.
Very cool.
Like, I got one. I got it maybe a couple months ago, but that's kind of been my main amp for a while now, since I got it anyway. Get great sounds out of it without destroying your ears, which is always nice.
Are you recording though, or are you playing that through a small cab, or are you using that like as a DI and playing with recording into your computer or something?
I actually use that amp through a 2x12 cab that actually a buddy of mine here in Columbus built, called Black Ocean cabs.
Very cool.
So I play that tiny little amp out of a pretty big 212, which is kind of weird, but it sounds really great, so I love it. One other amp that I've owned for a while now that I love is a Trainer YBA-1A.
Nice.
Yeah, that thing is like the polar opposite. It weighs, I don't know how many hundreds of pounds, or it's like so heavy.
Yeah,
and it's
totally.
really, really, really loud. So that's like the total opposite, but equally as badass. Actually, probably more badass, but
I've never played one of those
to stand in front of.
I believe it. How do those work with pedals? Is it a pretty good, like, clean pedal platform amp, or do you kind of set it up with a bit more gain as your baseline tone?
They're like super loud and super clean, so they're pretty good pedal platform. Although I tend to like a little bit of breakup, like amp breakup as my bass, like clean tone. So it's harder to get that with the Trainer.
I bet. Yeah.
But
got to put earplugs in for that one.
Yeah, for sure. and like make sure all of the pictures on the wall are like nailed down so they don't come flying off. But yeah, it is a super clean, super loud amp, so it's generally really good as a pedal platform for sure.
Definitely can relate to having to make sure that everything is secured in the room. When me and my buddy Troy used to jam, we used to make this stupid mistake of putting our coffees on top of our amps. I know. Halfway through every first song, our cab would be covered in coffee. Then we were just so bummed out that we were out of coffee.
I guess coffee can be not good to spill all over the place.
Yeah, not the best, but I'll admit that every time that happened, we kind of just smiled and gave each other a high five of like, fuck yeah, we're knocking shit over. We're knocking shit over.
Yeah, dude, that's rock and roll, man.
So it's about to be 2020, and
yes.
What do you got going on next year, man? I know a bunch of people are kind of waiting and curious to see if you might be doing any new pedals or projects or events that you might be going to. What's going on with Occult Effects next year?
So I've got a couple of things going on for at least the early part of next year, early part of 2020. First, I've got an event on... It's the Ohio Guitar Show. I think it's the biggest guitar kind of show in the state, if I'm not mistaken. So there are vendors and builders and all kinds of people from all over the place. Not even just Ohio. Pennsylvania and Michigan and Kentucky and all over. So I'll be there. That's on January 5th.
So that's the Ohio Guitar Show, January 5th, and that's just outside Columbus. And what's the location of that one?
Yes, it's just outside of Columbus in Hilliard, Ohio, at the McCoy Center. So
you're going to be there with a full pedal board?
Yep, I'll have a full pedal board and an amp set up so people can try stuff out, and if they want to grab some pedals or some other merch, that would be also available to do.
Awesome.
Yeah. As far as new stuff coming out, I'm always tinkering around and trying to come up with new things, and I've got some ideas floating around. I do have something I've been working on. I think it's going to be something like a sort of mystery box. So you get some cool stuff and a cool pedal, but you won't know what it is.
That sounds like a fun one.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird idea, I think, for like a guitar, pedals, but I think it would be fun. I think it's fun, so I'm gonna try it out. I've been working on that though. Some cool stuff, cool, unique stuff that is kind of outside my normal line of pedals.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that one.
Yeah, I haven't really announced like any release dates or anything like that, but it'll be in the early months of 2020.
Very cool. Sometimes I regret announcing release dates because as soon as I do, a problem happens like an hour later.
Yeah. That's how it goes, unfortunately, but yeah. So no date yet.
Well, folks can keep their eye out on the Instagram page, and that's at occult.effects, and that's the letters FX, right?
It's the word effects.
Sorry. For the listeners, that's
okay.
Instagram at occult.effects, and the word effects actually spelled out. I'll leave a link in the description, of course, of this episode of the podcast. So looking forward to all these new mystery pedals that you got coming out. And again, the Ohio Guitar Show is on January 5th, and that's just outside Columbus, Ohio in Hilliard. And what pedals are you going to have on that board?
Over the past few years, I've developed a lot of different pedals. So I think I'm probably going to slim it down for space reasons for this show, but I'll have a good assortment of stuff on there. I'll definitely have some 1692s. I'll have some Murmurs, the Rollright Stones, and maybe some other ones.
And if folks are going to come visit, should they bring their own guitar, or are you going to have something there for folks to use?
I like to bring something for people to play, but if you guys want to bring your own stuff, that's cool too. You can plug in and try some stuff out.
Very cool. And I wasn't planning on asking this, but it just crossed my mind because I'm always so curious and interested to know what kind of guitars people are playing. What kind of guitar are you using? What are the pickups like? And what tuning and string gauges are you using?
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot to mention that before when we talked about gear. I keep things pretty simple. My main guitar is a Gibson SG Special. It's a 2004, and it's all stock. I think. I replaced the tuning pegs on it, and I'm using 11s or 12s on there. I think pretty heavy gauge, and I'm tuned to D standard.
Nice. That's a very reasonable setup. I'm always curious to know with people because, I don't know if you've been watching this in forums and stuff lately, but there's just such like a huge gambit of what, some people are telling me they're using 9s and playing in drop A, and then other folks are saying that they're playing 14 to 72s playing in C standard, so I don't even know what to think anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of keep things as simple as I can, Like I'm not also terribly picky. I just kind of find my thing that I like and I just go with that,
Makes sense. And I've been ordering some custom string gauges lately, and the only downside of that is like I can't just run to the local guitar store and go find the things I need.
Yeah, I never even thought of that. That sounds like it'd be a bummer. Because you never know. Sometimes you're in a pinch, and you got to, get something together.
Totally.
Damn.
Well, Al, I really appreciate you making the time to chat with us on the podcast.
Of course, dude. Thank you so much for having me.
And again, for folks looking to keep up with you, chat with you, or check out more of your pedals, they should. Where should they go to?
The easiest way for anybody who has an internet connection is probably just get at me on Instagram, and that's at occult.effects. I'm also on Facebook at Occult Effects, and you can also email me at occult.effects@gmail.com.
Awesome, Al. So just to reiterate, people should check you out on Instagram at occult.effects, and that's EFFECTS. I'll leave a link in the description of this episode. You're also on Reverb. That's reverb.com/shop/occult effects. And, of course, Facebook. And I look forward to seeing what comes out next and seeing some photos and video clips from this guitar show that you're doing January 5th in Ohio.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
All right, thanks a lot, man. I'll keep up with you, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks again. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Again, this is Jason from Fuzzlord Effects, and you've been listening to the Fuzz Life podcast. Today, we got to sit down and chat with Al from Occult Effects. Be sure you check the link in the description of this episode and go check out what Al has been up to lately with Occult Effects. Check out his reverb shop, and of course, don't forget, if you are in the Columbus, Ohio area, don't forget to check out the Ohio Guitar Show, which is January 5th. Thank you all for listening, and I look forward to chatting with you next week.